Hi, I'm Greg Norman. If there's one thing I've always admired, it's the ability to be the best no matter what the obstacles over a long period of time. This year marks the 50th birthday of one such Australian legend, the Holden motor car. In 1948, Prime Minister Ben Chifley officially launched this car, the Holden 48215, with the happy words, "She's a beauty, she still is." During this program, we're going to take a look at those 50 fabulous years and see why Holden has been such an icon in this country. It's an Australian success story that we can all be proud of. The story of Australia's own car actually began in 1856, when James Alexander Holden set up a business in Adelaide making harnesses and saddles. By 1879, the business of J.A. Holden and Son, Henry, was well established. Then family friend Henry Frost joined, and Holden and Frost began repairing and building horse-drawn carriages and coaches. By 1905, when Henry Holden's son Edward joined, the motor car was making its presence felt on Adelaide roads. So Holden and Frost moved into car repairs, mainly in upholstery, and was soon manufacturing hoods and side curtains. The first General Motors cars were exported to Australia from America in 1914. And when the events of World War I caused an embargo on the importation of car bodies, Holden and Frost began large-scale local production. By war's end, a new company had been set up. It became one of Australia's biggest industrial enterprises. 6 years later, Holden's opened Australia's most modern production line at Woodville in South Australia. It was so impressive that General Motors struck an exclusive deal with Holden's. And it was in 1928 that Holden's famous lion and stone symbol, representing the legend of man's invention of the wheel, was first used. When the worldwide depression hit in the 30s, the number of car bodies Holden's built per year tumbled dramatically, from 36,000 to 1,600. As a result, GM bought it out and formed General Motors Holden's. Englishman Lawrence Hartnett was given the challenge to turn GMH into a profitable and expanding company. New body types and production techniques were introduced with great success. General Motors Holden's set up an impressive new headquarters and assembly plant on 20 hectares of land at Fisherman's Bend in Melbourne. It was then that Hartnett and other GMH executives began pursuing an ideal, the manufacture of a complete car in Australia. There was no doubt in their minds the company had the talented managerial and production people to achieve this goal. But the dream was put on hold when a far greater challenge arose: winning the Second World War as part of the Allied forces. General Motors Holden's factories around Australia were soon all working for the war effort. They built aeroplane frames, bomb cases, guns, trucks, boats, and other military hardware. It was an immense effort by Holden's people. Everybody had to learn and produce quickly, so skills and techniques advanced just as rapidly. In 1940, Prime Minister Bob Menzies opened GMH's new Pagewood plant in Sydney.
Mr. Menzies speaks in appreciation of those who, so far as possible, and in spite of the state of war, are developing the economic and industrial basis of the country. Not so long ago, factories were gloomy buildings in gloomy streets. Thank God those times have gone, and a new standard of industrial life has arisen, productive of plants good to look at, good to work in, plants such as this.
There might have been a war on, but Australians still needed cars.
New appearance, new ease of handling, the safety you need, the comfort you desire.
With many Australian men away fighting, women took over their jobs, and they performed brilliantly. It was a time when many workers learned new and unusual skills, from making tents, to torpedoes, to mass-producing internal combustion engines. It was the age of multi-skilling long before that became 90s jargon. The tide of the war began to turn, so Lawrence Hartnett and his fellow executives revived their plans for the first all-Aussie car. GMH engineers started designing the car they believed the company was best set up to build, and the first prototype was completed in 1944. Soon, dozens of variations, alternative designs, and mock-ups followed. There was a sense of excitement and expectation building within Holden's. The war effort proved the potential of secondary industry in Australia, so the government threw out the challenge. GMH was ready and determined to manufacture a car without subsidy or tariff protection. Late in '44, Hartnett went to the US and won over the General Motors hierarchy.
C. Wilson, on the other hand, was a pro, and he made a very pointed question to me. Well, Larry, supposing we said go ahead, would it be the Chevrolet or the Vauxhall or the Opel? And I said none of them. It would be designed for low volume for the peculiarities of Australia. Much to my surprise and relief, he says, goddamn good horse sense. So that was an approval.
The war ended in triumph for the Allies and for General Motors Holden's. The company had a full-scale foundry and, most importantly, had advanced markedly in production techniques and skills. So GMH engineers traveled to Motor City, Detroit, Michigan in the USA with their styling models and ideas for the Aussie car.
The company set up an office for us in the General Motors building, and we had a complete design office there, drafting and also facilities to get parts manufactured. And we designed the car and had the parts made from different suppliers and different branches of the General Motors organisation. And we built 3 complete cars. After we built the cars, we tested them on the General Motors proving ground.
The one in Milford was a very elaborate place with all sorts of hills, skid pans and speed loops, and the car was exercised there largely to develop the ride and handling and all that sort of thing that could be done at such a proving ground.
The Australian car passes over the famed Belgian block pavement on its way to one of the many special hills at the proving ground. This is at 27% grade. The car climbs 27 feet for every 100 feet of forward travel. The Australian car takes to the high-speed lane for an engine performance test. It is powered by a 6-cylinder, valve-and-head engine with a displacement of 132 1/2 cubic inches. It has a bore of 3 inches with a 3 1/8 inch stroke. The engine has an SAE rating of 21 6/10 horsepower, producing 54 brake horsepower at 4,000 revolutions per minute. From designing boards, from thorough research, and from rigorous and exacting tests made at the proving ground, General Motors Engineering, through commercial specifications supplied by the staff of General Motors Holden, have produced this new automobile for Australia.
In late 1946, 3 handmade cars were shipped in secrecy to Sydney. They were accompanied by the Australian design team and 22 American technicians and their families.
All of the Australians, we had gone over without our wives. So we'd been in America without our wives for periods from 6 months up to 18 months in the case of one chappie. We assumed that somebody would take the cars and get them over to Fisherman's Bend. And we took the opportunity of meeting up with our families again.
Unbelievably, the 3 cars were driven under cover of darkness from Sydney to Melbourne, and nobody from the press spotted them. The secrecy was holding. Well, almost.
We disguised the cars, of course. The front grills, of course, were disguised with a grill that wasn't even looking anything like what it was to be finally, and we had some panels on the features on the rear fenders and odd bits and pieces like that. But it wasn't very long before the locals up round Callista and these parts, seeing these cars pass every day, they worked it all out. They knew what was happening long before the car was released.
To survive the many and varied road conditions of Australia, the cars would have to be tough, so nothing was left to chance.
Our aim in those days was to accumulate about 35,000 miles, more or less trouble-free. This was our objective. And parts that gave us trouble in the meantime, of course, we would have to maybe do a bit of redesign or alteration work to make sure that they met our standards of test.
Cushioned springs take the weight of above-average adults in a bumping test. Under these continual stresses, any weaknesses would soon be revealed.
In April 1948, a production run of 10 cars was done under even more secrecy. Everybody at GMH knew that the time to launch their new car was close, but what would it be called? The koala, the kangaroo, even the emu, and the Melba. They were just some of the names suggested by executives, employees, and the public for Australia's own car. GMH executives wanted the name of our new car to be short and catchy, and definitely Australian. Finally, a name was chosen. Would you believe? The Canberra. But then there was a change of mind. Why not salute the name that began it all? The first Australian car, with the official model designation 48215, would be called the Holden, after James Alexander and his family. What a fitting tribute to the adventurous, innovative trio of James, his son Henry, and grandson Edward, who had inspired achievements beyond even their wildest imaginings. The Holden, it was the perfect name. At Fisherman's Bend, the employees worked around the clock to have everything ready for the November 29th launch date. After years of planning, testing, sheer determination, and hard work by GMH around Australia, the Holden 48215, commonly known as the FX, was ready to roll.
It's a great sense of satisfaction and relief when you see all of your work. See, we'd worked on it, well, 2 years in Australia and then almost 2 years in America. That's 4 years. 4 years of constant work. And, you know, you become a little bit edgy at the end of it. You're wondering whether it's going to be a success and how the public will receive it and all of these doubts about it. But it was very exciting, actually.
There was really never any chance that it would be a squib in any way.
It was a great day, that day 50 years ago. If the men and women of GMH were proud and excited, then so was Australia's Prime Minister Ben Chifley. He loved the car. Mr. Chifley had been one of GMH's strongest supporters in their efforts to build an Aussie car during his time in government, so to see his delight meant a great deal. It was now time to let the public have their say. Would they like this new Holden? The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Australians loved the Holden. Everybody wanted to be the first in their street or town to own one.
It wasn't a fussy car to drive. It was a car that the minute you got in it and drove it round the block seemed effortlessly easy by comparison with the British cars of the time, which generally had smaller engines and needed a lot of revs to get them going. This was the exact opposite. You could just sort of stroke it along in first and second, and in no time you're in top gear, and very responsive top gear. And as I say, I think in the first few minutes of driving it round the block, the potential buyer probably thought, gee, this is really comfortable motoring and I like it.
It was very exciting, actually, when it turned out to be such a success. I mean, we started building, I think, 10 a day, and then the orders started to flow in, and we couldn't cope with them. We increased the production, and we finally got it after a few months to 100 a day, and from there on it went on and on.
And I remember seeing the very first Holden come into our town, come into Hurstbridge. I stood on the footpath on the edge of the town, watching it wind down this little narrow, dusty road into Hurstbridge, and we stood there. I was about 3 or 4 years old at the time, just watching this car, and it was just magical. He was this mythical Holden. Drove by, we all waved, and it drove up the road to where this guy owned it. And it was just a part of your life that you'll never ever forget.
So began our enduring love affair with Holden.
The bodies move steadily along conveyor lines while safety glass, upholstery, and the many fittings are placed in position. From the vision of the stylist, the skilled planning of the engineer, the detailed drawings of the draftsman, and the exhaustive road testing of prototypes, more than 100,000 Australian-made Holden cars and utilities have been produced.
Holden in the 50s were very good for each other. The austere war years were long gone. It was the decade of families and fun and rock and roll.
I suppose in a sense it gave motoring to Australia. There'd been other Australian cars before, but none of them ever commercially viable. Suddenly there was a car that almost from the moment it was released was commercially viable. The market wanted it and they were prepared to pay for it, and it went in droves.
Well, young fellow, now you're ready for the road. You bet I'm ready, and raring to go. Boy, oh boy, am I glad to get out of that showroom. The open road for me. Hills, I just love them. Watch me take this bend. Just fingertip control will slip those gears of mine wherever you want them. And now to the Manly Carnival. There'll be plenty to see here. For sheer beauty, this would be hard to beat. Well, here we are, arriving at National Park. We're certainly getting around. Well, you good people who've listened so patiently to my story, you too can enjoy all the pleasures of motoring. I've plenty of brothers and sisters. Just tell them at Rio Motors that you know me. Yes, that's right. The name is Holden.
Another legendary part of Australian popular culture, the ute, was introduced in 1951, and planning was already well underway for a new model, to be known as the FJ. The most noticeable visual change would be the grille. How would Australians respond to changes to their car? GMH waited nervously. If the public loved the 48215, then they absolutely adored the FJ and its exuberant new grille. There was no doubt that Holden was Australia's most popular car, and drivers were already becoming fanatical in their response to driving Holdens. There was a close bond among all at GMH. They worked hard and made sure they enjoyed themselves, especially at their annual picnic. GMH wanted to introduce a more modern, Australian-designed body which was bigger and roomier. Considering how hugely successful the FJ had been, many thought they were taking a big risk.
We were always a little apprehensive as whether we'd get the same reaction that we'd had at previous models, but usually we were very, very happy as it came about. The dealers were all very excited and people just flocked into showrooms, so we were actually on a real high at that time.
The interest in a new Holden in those days was just phenomenal. You used to get front pages of the newspapers and posters, actual newspaper posters saying "New Holden!" exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Well, with the FE, for instance, which was the first move from the old round shape to what you'd call a three-box shape today, was a very dramatic move, but very few people knew about it, although a magazine had some scooped photos from the Sydney Pagewood plant.
The FE was launched in July 1956, and once again, Holden could do no wrong. The FE and Australia seemed made for each other.
Holden, you in my Holden, life is simply divine. All the world is fair, I'm a millionaire. On the road ahead, there's a happy sign. Holden, you in my Holden, we will have a wedding, no regretting, baby, ain't that fine.
By the time the FE was released, see, the Australians, we were starting to gather quite a bit of experience by this time, and we had a bigger hand. This was, I think, the greatest thrill because we were sort of starting to spread our wings at this stage. Our engineering organisation was becoming a little more sophisticated, and we could do these things, and I think this gave us a big thrill, or did me anyway.
He's known as the average man, and he was used by General Motors Holdens in designing the new Holden. In short, Mr. Average Man is just a transparent plastic cutout, but he conforms to the general physical appearance of the average Australian. He was used in checking the position of the seats, the brake and clutch pedals, and the steering wheel. Indeed, he was very important throughout the 3 years it took to develop the new Holden. Whether your family is small or large like this one, you'll enjoy the smoothest, most comfortable motoring at lowest cost in a Holden. The spacious luggage compartment completely fills your holiday needs. Inside, Holden comfortably seats 6 people. Let's see just how roomy and how comfortable Holden really is. See how wide Holden seats are, how comfortably you sink back into them, how much legroom there is. 2 more reasons for Holden's deep, relaxing comfort are the soft foam padding and proven Z-type seat springs that give you a smooth, pleasant ride wherever you go. Yes, how proudly you'll drive a Holden. For Holden combines all the things that make going places so much more fun. Roominess for 6, space for all your luggage, wide, clear vision, and smooth, silent riding. In comfort, as in all the things that make for happier family motoring, you get more for your money in Holden, Australia's own car.
2 years later, the FC replaced the FE, and Holden achieved an incredible 50% market share.
Well, I think if you get a market share that high, quite frankly, there's a degree of neglect in it in the opposition. Holden had hit on the right formula, the formula that people in the country obviously wanted, and in a sense, for a long time, there was no rival, so they had this massive market share.
We liked it very much. We reached the plateau, and there was a strong feeling, though, that we were getting too big a market share. And In the United States at that time, they were talking about breaking General Motors up into components, and we thought, whoops, we'll have a problem here. So it was something that could only last a certain time.
A new plant was built in Elizabeth, South Australia, and subsequently opened by Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth.
The Queen and Prince Philip talking formally with some of the men. Many of the men working in this plant had come to Australia from Europe to settle with their families in the garden town of Elizabeth. The employees and their families have another opportunity to cheer the royal couple as they drive from the body assembly plant to the body hardware plant. The royal party proceeds to a display featuring a Holden sedan broken down into its 17,000 parts. In May 1958, Earl Dorm, then managing director of GMH, poured the first foundation for this new plant. In 1959, the following year, the first production parts were being made here. The visit will provide a further inspiration to the people of Elizabeth to continue to make the new garden town one of which the Queen will always be proud.
Also, in 1958, GMH's own testing facility, the Lang Lang Proving Ground, south of Melbourne, opened.
In the early days, we would put our rough track cars through 2,000 miles and our durability cars through 25,000 miles. In them days, there was no cars with heaters. So we came in rugged up in overcoats and scarves and hats.
Since 1958, Lang Lang has played a vital part in the development of every new model of Holden, virtually putting the cars through hell and packing more into a month of testing than the average motorist would do in a couple of lifetimes.
Over the years, because of the technology change from the mechanical age to the electronic age, we've been able to keep abreast and improve and introduce new testing to make sure that all the products are tested prior to releasing to the public. I've been at GMH almost 40 years, and every day is a good day.
It was the decade that shook the world with its vibrant music and bold fashions. A rebellious time when being young was a statement. And what an exciting and competitive decade the 60s was for Holden. For the first time, GMH had local rivals, Ford and Chrysler.
Yeah, the introduction of Valiant and Ford's Falcon gave us a new sense of purpose because we realised that we had some real competition.
Well, they increased that competition, and quite obviously they looked at Holden's massive market share and said, hey, you know, there's some of this to be had. And immediately it did provide competition, and it lifted the standards for everybody, and that's why we got these improvements in styling and ultimately in many other features as well.
The rivalry between Holden, Falcon and Valiant made for great office, workshop and schoolyard discussion, and which car you supported became a badge of honor. The 60s began for Holden with the release of the FB. Stylistically, it was a significant change, yet the basic price was actually slightly cheaper than the previous FC model. So Holden's amazing 50% share of the Australian marketplace was maintained.
Australian as they come, that's Holden.
All the family, take the wheel. Feel that new big style appeal. First in styling, first in sales. Holden's #1. Holden, 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 Holden. Take those hills, mile on mile. Smile with Holden's new big style. First in styling, first in sales. Holden's #1. Holden, 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 Holden. Take the wheel, feel alive. Holden is the one to drive. See your dealer, he knows why. Big style Holden's your best buy. First in styling, first in sales. Holden's #1.
Making Holdens was an important part of the GMH setup, but it wasn't the only part.
It's the day when the woman of the house looks at those extra special things, like the sheer look Frigidaire refrigerators, the sort that every woman wants in her kitchen. These refrigerators and cooking appliances have the luxury look that rarely appeals to the modern housewife. And they're all part of the vast stream of first-class equipment made and distributed in Australia by GMH. If you look around, you're bound to notice the cars. Perhaps you'll be comparing the relative appeal of the Vauxhall, Chevrolet, Pontiacs, all, of course, GMH products.
Next came the models widely considered by many as their favorite Holdens, the EJ and the EH. As well as a distinctive restyled body, the range introduced the name Premier, which for the next 2 decades would be identified with luxurious Holdens. The EJ was the first Holden to feature safety belt anchorages, and its production run included the millionth Holden.
Well, this is the year of the millionth Holden, and this is the millionth Holden. And here is another man who's been responsible for its production in one form or the other, Mr. Caleb Stock. Caleb, how long have you been with GMH?
22 years.
At Dandenong?
16 at Fisherman's Bend.
Holden has new performance.
Then the EH took over from the EJ. In 18 months, more than 250,000 EHs were sold, making it the fastest selling Australian car ever.
The EH was a very functionally styled car by comparison with other cars of that period. There was no excess sort of metal on it. It was a good looking, probably male looking car. It was not only, of course, the best looking Holden, in my opinion, but the public liked it best too because it was the best selling Holden for a long, long time.
The 60s also saw the Canadian hell drivers visit and do some alarming things with their Holdens.
This is called precision driving. Here's a new way to do a U-turn. Skipping bumpers at 60 miles an hour. Here they come at 60 miles an hour again. 4 cars in perfect formation, only inches between bumpers. Anyone could do this after 20 years of practice. Did I tell you they drive one-handed? The other arm's held behind the seat for support, coming or going. Master of his machine, specialist in the reverse skid, and spectacular showman, Bobo Canup. Look at those tyres roll under. That's real torture. But 2 far over, and they have to turn the wheel pretty smartly in the same direction, or they're in big trouble. Oh, that's a powerful bit of driving. Here's Pete Gross killing off a gleaming, not-so-late model. Playing with danger is strictly a business for hell drivers.
Holden continued to change models. The initial demand for the 1965 HD was exceptionally high, but then the new model's earlier promise was not realized. So GMH hit back immediately with the HR.
The time is now, and the car is Holden. New 1966 Turbo Smooth Holden. Yes, something's happened to Holden. Look again, look closely. The time is now, and the car is Holden, engineered to a new Turbo Smooth car. Your world changes around you when you discover new Holden. This year, Holden's gone all out on everything except the price. New style, new comfort, new power. Discover new Turbo Smooth Holden for yourself. You only have to drive it once to discover nothing else will do.
The strategy worked, with car buyers making it one of the biggest selling Holdens of all. By the way, the HR was the first to be sold in dollars, and a new sedan cost $2,167.
In all GMH design, safety takes precedence. And among the many safety features is the dished steering wheel. As machines work the metal into shapes and specifications set down by the engineers, designs become realities, and the new parts take form. This capacity to manufacture equipment designed by our own engineers has added a most important skill to Australia. A skill which enables the company to conceive and produce almost any type of mechanical equipment according to the nation's needs. In GMH plants, the proved designs go into mass production using the most modern industrial techniques. And the Australian-made crankshaft is exported to some of the largest industrial nations of the world. Huge presses form the steel, drawing and trimming until the outer shell of the door emerges, made to the designer's specifications. An inner panel is added to the outer to form the strong door shell. In GMH plants throughout Australia, bodybuilding and vehicle assembly takes place. In Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, Perth and Adelaide, the body, engine and many other components are brought together to become Holden, a car for Australia and for export to many countries.
1968 was a monumental year for GMH because two famous Holden models made their debut. The Kingswood and, of course, the Monaro.
There's a whisper on the wind, Monaro. There's a thunder down the street, Monaro. There's a full-throated roar, there are four on the floor, and life is suddenly very Monaro. It's very Monaro this year.
Monaro by Holden, Australia.
Australia's first sports machine. The racy looks of a high-priced Continental rally car, but no fancy foreign price tag. 3 models: Monaro GPS, or GPS 327. Out to drive you wild. Wide, road-hugging track, super-tuned suspension, engines right up to a 250 horsepower V8, console, floor shift, manual or automatic, tachometer, and safety features all around you.
Monaro is going to be very Monaro this year.
Make him show you.
The pillarless Monaro was the first local vehicle of its type and won Holden a legion of new fans.
I think my favourite 60s, I know my favourite 60s car was the 350 Holden Monaro. And it was a significant car for them because for the first time you had a truly sporting Holden.
Other advertisers loved using Monaros too.
Products. Whatever you ask of them, you can count on more from Caltex, the money saver.
With the HK, Holden offered a larger choice of models, engines, transmissions and options than had previously been seen in a mass-produced Australian car. Safety features fitted to all models included an energy-absorbing steering column, another local first. And in 1969, the year man landed on the moon, Holden went for extra grunt with the locally designed and built HT-V8. It was a roaring success.
You are in the future, now, in the new Monaro. The new Monaro, imported straight from the future. Now's the time to go Monaro. Move ahead of your time. The new Monaro at your Holden dealer.
The 60s finished triumphantly for Holden, and especially the model named after the Aboriginal word meaning to fly.
10 cars. 10 cars, and one of them will be chosen tonight as Wheels Car of the Year. This is what they've all been through, an extensive series of spectacular tests to prove whether they've got what it takes to hold down this prestigious award.
I think it's a great little car if you're mini-sized. I think if you're not, you might have trouble getting in and out there. I like the look of this one. Gorgeous ochre colour, nice simple lines. Looks as if it would hold a lot of shopping. Very good little runabout. I like the Tirana. It's a very feminine car. It would appeal to almost all women, I'd say.
Kevin Bartlett, champion racing car driver, what do you think the Wheels Car of the Year should be?
The Holden Tirana. Great concept, putting a powerful 6-cylinder engine in a small package and making it work well with good suspension and steering. It's a good looker and comfortable.
The Wheels Car of the Year award for 1969 for achievement of design aims and execution of concept. The car of the year is the Holden Tirana LC. Right again, Kevin. Right on the ball, mate.
Holden in Australia came of age during the 60s. The broad market appeal of many models meant GMH ended the decade right in the middle of the Australian way of life. And Holden was about to make its presence felt on the racetrack.
Bathurst engenders in everyone, I suppose, this mystique of a degree of difficulty, of a great challenge, of something that we've got that's quite unique in this part of the world. Something we can be very pleased we've got, because a lot of other countries of the world have great racing circuits, but they're not Bathurst. They're not this track. And so I guess when you throw the might of General Motors up against the might of Ford and all these drivers out there sort of battling away on this magnificent circuit, well, it's going to create a bit of a natural sort of legend out there amongst people of Australia who are going to say, hey, this is something different. This is not a home and away game, this is the grand final. Well, 9 wins at Bathurst, I think I've been very fortunate to have managed to have accumulated that many. I mean, your first one's special, because you don't know you can do it. You've got to prove to yourself you can do it, and to get out there and to manage to sort of, I suppose, overcome the odds, because you shoot yourself in the foot all the time. You think, oh, I've not deserved this, and you end up making some crazy mistake because you do it, but at 72 I did it. I was very, very confident of winning that race. I can't explain why. It was just one of those things that I thought, this is my turn. And on the racetrack, well, I was battling against Alan Moffat and his big Ford GTHO. Very difficult to beat because of the sheer horsepower of that car. But, you know, someone was smiling on me that weekend because it rained. And when it rained, it meant that I was in there with a real show. So the rest was history. And my life was never the same ever since. Well, 78 was my first year driving under the management of John Shepherd. Now, John was a great stickler for immaculate preparation. His cars were always beautiful as a new pin. They were polished. Everything had to be just so. And it really had a great effect on the team, because anyone in the racing team who was, I guess, part of that always felt good about themselves and good about the cars, because they were presented so beautifully. I drove that year for the first time with Jimmy Richards. I think that at this stage, I think our biggest threat will come from Colin Bond, as a matter of fact. I think he's got his car pretty well organised. I think Moffat's due for a bit of a bomb out. I'll give him 40 or 50 laps. I think the two Ron Hodgson cars probably in the same boat. Johnny Harvey and Charlie O'Brien's car should be in the same as well. Race starts, of course, you're emotionally charged and you've got this great idea about how it's all going to unfold, but then you've got to be patient, and it takes hours. It takes 6 hours out there of total concentration, total focus before it sort of begins to get to the closing stages of that race. I think the only thing as a racing driver you can do is to take it lap by lap, not to get too carried away with where you are at that particular point in time. So as you get down to the last handful of laps, naturally enough, being human, you are thinking about, okay, I've got to go over the top of this mountain a couple of more times. You go up that mountain straight, you get up to the top of the mountain, okay, we've got that lap done. And finally, when you do it in that last lap, it's the relief starts to set in as you're coming around the top of that mountain the very last time, because you can coast to the finishing line from there.
Peter, from today, you have won $55,000.
Winning's a very interesting sort of word. I mean, people think that every time you go out you're going to win. Well, of course, that's quite impossible, because there's all these other people out there with a similar idea, and it's only one person's going to get there that particular weekend.
I did go through a period of time at that race where I just couldn't lose it. I mean, I've nursed a car at home a couple of times with different problems, and the car refused not to win. So I think in hindsight, when you've had a remarkably good run and you've gone to that track and you've managed to sort of eke out so many race successes, you start realising after a while that, hey, you were pretty fortunate.
It became a very big part of our business. It gave Holden a complete, instead of being a family fuddy-duddy's car, all of a sudden it got some muscle and some grunt and attracted a new generation of Holden supporters.
For a car manufacturer, they'd sometimes love to think that they won every time they went out. They'd love to think it. Yeah, we win all the time. We're cool. But, you know, if General Motors without Ford or Ford without General Motors, they've got nothing. Because that mountain was all about the battle between those two giants of the automotive manufacturing scene.
Gave me a lot of personal satisfaction because I was invariably, I had a bet with my counterpart at Ford, and I was usually winning it.
Well, in life you always want your challenges, and certainly in 1979 with the Repco reliability trial, that was a major challenge in my life. I was inspired to do it, of course, by the history of what had gone before, by those Red X trials and those trials through the 50s and 60s, people out there battling against the elements. Can they get down this better road? And I thought, yeah, that's for me. I'm going to have a go at this.
To cap it all, there's sand now and dust. South of Meekatharra on the way to Perth, there's been heavy rain, and weary, sore-eyed drivers have to cope with water and mud. And this mud is really treacherous. Sydney is only 300 miles now, but it seems an age away. Snow, which fell a few days ago, is melting, making the road slippery and dangerous. Holidaymakers and workers from the Snowy Mountain scheme come down to the road and wave the cars through. 7 days ago, these cars and their crews were sweating it out in the tropical north. 2 days ago, they were in Western Australia's vast plains. No reliability trial has ever offered such extremes of terrain and of heat and cold. Another team member is Lex Davison. Holden's took both first and second team prizes.
In '79, the Repco trial was the single most tough motorsport event I've ever been in my life. It was just incredible. I mean, I had virtually no sleep for a fortnight.
100, fairly slippery.
The top 15 cars, including the 3 Team Commodores and the 3 Cortinas, have got away from the rest.
Minutes is a couple of flat tyres, and it's so easy to get a flat tyre. I don't know how you get a flat tyre and how you don't get a flat tyre. I went through that the very bad section there, and honestly, I hit a rock so hard to the left-hand front wheel, you could see the tube, it didn't go flat. I thought, oh, this is my section. The result for Commodore was extraordinary. I think to this day, a lot of people think it was all done by mirrors. They think that it was all sort of too easy. No, anything could have happened. It was a remarkable achievement. Here was the debut of Commodore onto the market. A car which was only lightly modified. It wasn't modified nearly as much as what a lot of people thought. The maintenance schedule we did in our car was very light indeed, because we simply didn't have the time to be rebuilding these cars. You simply threw bits and pieces in, or you maintained it as best you could as you went. And in all honesty, the cars were extraordinary. The drivers had to drive them, of course, with a reasonable amount of care, but hey, you make mistakes.
And I hit a few things at different times in that event, I can tell you, where I thought, this car's all over, Red Rover. But it came back for more. So to have succeeded in finishing that event, I thought was probably the greatest sort of thing that I ever actually had to overcome, the greatest challenge I've ever overcome in my life. And to have won it, of course, was icing on the cake. I think the reason fans are so passionate about Bathurst is because it's such a difficult track. So as you're going around the top of that mountain, you are very aware of the crowd. You're very aware of the fact that this is your last lap of this particular weekend, and you start relaxing and enjoying yourself. And I always used to take a great deal of delight in waving to the crowd and, hey, great, we're here today, isn't this good? And really just enjoying the moment. And of course, as you go over that line, it's just a great feeling that here we are, job well done, call the pits. First thing you think about, I guess, is just seeing the guys, seeing those mechanics who you've seen so little of during the day and saying, hey guys, let's celebrate, because together we've managed to do it.
The importance of motor racing to the development of new models, I think, came from specifically in the area of handling and braking, as much as sheer power and riding comfort. So the cars were very, very stable and very, very safe. And I think that that has led tremendously to the development of Holden today.
Well, while Peter Brock and his teammates were making Bathurst a must-see event all through the 70s and 80s, Holden released its most famous ad of all.
Australia, what's your favourite sport?
Football.
Snack?
Pies.
Animal?
Kangaroos.
And what's your favourite car, Australia?
Holden.
Let me see, that's football, meat pies, kangaroos and Holden cars, huh?
Right.
Well, you sure sound like Australia to me.
We are.
Well, then you better tell me again, because I just might forget.
We love football, meat pies, kangaroos and Holden cars. Football, meat pies, kangaroos and Holden cars.
That's football, meat pies, kangaroos and Holden cars.
Football and meat pies, kangaroos and Holden cars.
I think you better tell me again.
We love football, meat pies, kangaroos and Holden cars.
In case you're wondering, this film is brought to you by football, meat pies, kangaroos, and Australia's own car.
They go together underneath the sun and stars. Football and meat pies, kangaroos and Holden cars.
Makes sense to me.
Football, meat pies, kangaroos and Holden cars.
And if football, meat pies, kangaroos, and Holden cars go together, so do Holden and safety. GMH has always put the welfare of its drivers and passengers first. Of course, the methods and the way of conveying the message have changed a bit over the years.
The half-hearted signal for a right-hand turn can be a killer. Reversing without care has killed and maimed hundreds. Following too closely is a risky practice, especially when a driver's attention is momentarily distracted. Inattentive driving causes thousands of accidents.
That example of road rage comes from the 1950s, but the essential message has always remained the same. Cars crash, drivers make mistakes, which is why Holden's commitment to safety has always been strong.
If you drive a car, watch this. 4 perfect tyres having the entire tread stripped from them mechanically. There they are, as bald as Yul Brynner. Okay, so what happens next? Oh no, don't say he's going to drive on those things. Not only drive, Bill McLaughlin is putting the car over a double row of bricks, spaced so everyone gives those treadless tyres a real beating. Here he comes again. It's like putting a car over the Grand National steeplechase course. Well, the tyres haven't blown out yet, so Bill gives them the gutter test, crisscrossing up and down the curb. This would test any tyre, but fancy trying it on 4 tyres with no rubber on them at all. Now let's try the whole thing in reverse. See if they stand up to that. Well, they do. The latest thing in tyre construction, 3T nylon cord, apparently makes tyres so tough they can do without a tread. A real contribution to safety on the road.
Over the ever-changing Holden years, the safety testing has always been an integral part of each new model. Holden's reputation for leadership in safety technology is well deserved. 1966, first Australian car company to fit seatbelts on all models. 1968, first with an energy-absorbing steering wheel. 1969, first to set up crash test facilities. 1990, the first Australian family car with independent rear suspension. 1993, first with a driver airbag system. First to sponsor field accident research. 1995, first with a passenger airbag. 1996, first and only manufacturer to have its restraint system acknowledged as an international benchmark in airbag design. Today's Commodore continues to set the standard for safety features. Holden's safety technology has two basic aims. One is to help give drivers the ability to avoid collisions in the first place. The other is to help protect drivers and passengers from injury once a collision becomes unavoidable. Another Australian first, a two-stage combination of front seatbelt pre-tensioners and airbag. The pre-tensioners are triggered by a sophisticated collision sensor, tightening seatbelts before the occupants begin to move forward. In higher speed frontal crashes, airbags and seatbelt work together, and it happens in the blink of an eye. 15 milliseconds. The electronic crash sensor decides that this impact is severe. 20 milliseconds. The seatbelt pre-tensioners fire. 25 to 35 milliseconds. Driver and passenger airbags break free and begin to inflate. 60 milliseconds. The occupant's head and chest contact the airbags, which begin to deflate immediately. 100 milliseconds. Occupants begin to rebound. 150 milliseconds. They begin to travel rearward and make contact with seat backs and head restraints. When the car stops completely, its engine and fuel pumps shut down automatically, the doors unlock, the interior light comes on. Commodore's side impact airbag system is yet another Australian first. In the case of a severe side collision, this unique side impact airbag deploys in just 10 milliseconds. Located in the driver and front passenger seats, the side airbags feature a special two-stage design which helps protect against chest, head, and neck injuries. Commodore also delivers the protection of center rear lap sash seatbelts, impact-resistant seat backs, and special anti-submarine seat ramps. Its substantially stronger body structure better manages crash energy, significantly reducing injury risks. Each of us is different. The same minor accident that bruises a 20-year-old can become life-threatening to a 60-year-old because our bones become more fragile as we age. Females are 50% more likely to suffer neck injuries. Small-statured people face bigger risks. Babies and children need special protection. Holden understands our unique driving environment. Because a large proportion of Australian highways are undivided, we have significantly more offset frontal collisions. There's a high proportion of uncontrolled intersections. The trees and poles set so close to many of our roads allow little margin for error. On average, side impact collisions are also likely to be more severe. Australia is different, and Holden safety feature systems take that difference into account.
It's a big back door and a fold-down floor with a boot that hollers out for more. New Toronto hatchback loaded with smart thinking. Heads, it's a beaut, and tails, it's a boot, and all but the ladies think it's cute. It's the next best thing to having a car and a half. Toronto, it's loaded with smart thinking. Smart thinking's what to run.
If you want a personal car, but you need a back seat, we may have just what you've been looking for. Tirana hatchback. No matter what model you get all this. A handy 3-door with a fold-down floor. A 4-seater, a 3-seater, a 2-seater, a neat little sleeper.
Should we take the lino?
Oh, yes, almost forgot.
Both Tirana hatchbacks come with something extra special that costs a little extra. This handy hatchback hutch. First-class accommodation. No reservations.
Got it.
And it turns your hatchback into a mini camper in minutes. You've got 2 clear plastic side windows that convert into 2 fly-screened windows.
Are you ready for bed?
Mm-hmm.
And a full-length zippered rear door. The hatchback hutch. Smart thinking, Tirana style.
Now, on the wings of change, Holden announces a fantastic, exciting range of totally new cars. Look at new Holden. Totally, radically new. Longer, lower, wide track. A fantastic new shape with fresh, clean flowing lines.
The 70s began well for Holden with the release of the HQ model in 1971. It was hailed in some quarters as the most significant Holden since the original 48-215.
New Holden Premier, the new luxury sedan, distinguished by its 4 headlights and handsome new grille. Australia's first long wheelbase wagons, built to drive easy even when your roads turn rough and rugged. Wheelbase right out to 114 inches, more room, more comfort. And Kingswood sedan, smooth flowing, sporty lines, the new style.
As well as new versions of previous Holden sedans, wagons, and coupes, the range included a new long wheelbase luxury model, which I've got a bit of a soft spot for, called the Statesman. The HQ design placed a considerable emphasis on safety, and nearly 500,000 models were sold. For a lot of us who were teenagers in the 70s, there seemed to be plenty of Holden models to suit our way of life, especially if, like me, you loved the beach. And you always made sure your Sandman panel van looked immaculate in case visitors dropped in. In 1975, Holden introduced the zippy little Gemini.
Now, Holden unleash a new power in the small car market. New Holden Gemini. The little car full of big ideas. Holden Gemini, developed for Australia by Isuzu Motors of Japan and General Motors Holdens. All the style, all the comfort, all the features you wanted in a small car. Performance proved right for Australia. Service and parts wherever you drive. Gemini is built compact for all the tight places, built Holden strong to tame the open spaces, and it's priced just right for today. You and I and Gemini.
It soon became Australia's most popular small 4-cylinder car. The HX of 1976 was a further refinement of the original HQ range. Modified engines were fitted to ensure Holden met strict new anti-pollution standards. And that year at Bathurst, 2 racing legends, Jack Brabham and Sterling Moss, drove an LH Tirana with mixed success.
This is the way it is at Bathurst. On the surface, it's colourful and stridently spectacular. But beneath the veneer, it's many things. Such as Brabham preparing to re-enter the race, his crew having rebuilt the shattered car in 3 hours.
But what a thrill to see 2 Grand Prix greats back behind the wheel. The refinements to Holden continued. and in 1977 saw the introduction of radial tuned suspension. It gave drivers dramatically improved ability to recover from a slide and to remain in control after a violent swerve or under heavy braking. Meanwhile, another top-secret Holden project was underway. It would be a major change of direction for the General. It was called Project V, and it would change the face of Holden dramatically.
Project V. An engineering code term. 2 words to embrace one of the most significant engineering projects carried out in Australia in recent times.
I believe the consumer is telling us that he wants a car that is more manoeuvrable, easy to operate within the city, a little smaller on the outside, and yet I would not want to sacrifice anything in terms of interior room, particularly for driver and passenger comfort.
Skilled test drivers use special road surfaces to throw the V car into wild gyrations to examine suspension behavior. They mercilessly play transmissions by running full throttle and ramming the gears from forward to reverse without respite. Other tests are just as punishing. The drivers are probing for weak spots. They're trying to break the cars. They fail.
Launched after Holden had spent more than $110 million on the development, the Commodore combined a German body design with an Australian engine and local mechanical components. Importantly, it was significantly shorter and narrower than the previous Holdens and showed GMH leading the trend towards smaller cars, sparked by the fuel crisis of the 1970s. The GM Corporation had started work in Europe on the Commodore in 1971. It was the second vehicle in the World Car Program, the first being the Gemini. In its Australian form, with locally developed drivetrain, steering, suspension, body strengthening, and dust sealing, it became the 18th new family Holden.
Holden Commodore SLE, a new kind of car for Australia. At your Holden dealer now.
This is it. And this time I know it's for real. This is it.
The VB Commodore was released in October 1978 to immediate market success and went on to win Wheels Car of the Year. For the 25th consecutive year, Holden was the market leader. The VC Commodore refined the original design. Wheels magazine heralded the launch with the statement, "The new VC Commodore isn't perfect, but that doesn't stop us declaring it is easily the best Australian car ever."
The Commodore, Australia's Commodore, because the Commodore outruns them all. And the Commodore has got the winning score. Fantastic car, Australia's car, the Holden Commodore.
The 80s proved to be Holden's most challenging decade. Sales faltered. Rivals triumphed. Holden, having led the way in the fuel energy crisis environment, found it difficult going when the crisis receded and large cars regained their popularity. But Holden and Commodore were not done yet, as future models would show.
And then suddenly, in the last probably 15 years and really going fast in the last 10 or so, they've become enormously competitive in every way. In primary safety, in the way the things steer and handle, and that was the fabulous RTS suspension, radial tuned suspension. But it really did work and suddenly changed the whole image of the way Holdens handle, and I suppose to a degree the sort of drivers that wanted to drive them and what they wanted to do in them, the way they wanted to use the cars.
The 1988 VN Commodore proved a tremendous success as soon as it was launched, taking a clean sweep of the major motoring awards.
Do you know the best thing? It's a great car to drive. Well, isn't that what it's all about?
Can't say I blame you for liking it.
Like it? We love it.
And so did female drivers in the Grand Prix Holden Celebrity Races. For some Australians, owning a Holden is not just a matter of driving from point A to point B. It's a complete way of life. Their devotion to one particular model of Holden is all-consuming, and they are fanatical in that devotion. Like 68-year-old Mary Brown.
I think they're the best car on the market, even after 50 years.
For Scott Dunkley, to FB or to not FB has never been a problem.
When you hop in and drive them, they're just classic to drive, and you cruise down the highway and people look at you and they give you the thumbs up, and that just makes you feel really good that you own one.
For Darrell Head, it's a case of only having eyes for EHs.
What they did with the ambulance conversions, they weren't a factory job, they were done by bodybuilders when the vehicles were new, and they put an extra door in the driver's side and cut away part of the floor and put a fold-down seat for the second officer to sit in to work on the patient. And put bucket seats in and obviously kitted them out with ambulance equipment.
And Graham Fuller has been an FE lover virtually since he was a baby.
I came home in the car as a baby. I always told Dad that I wanted the car. Just prior to that, a guy offered him $90 for it at work. And I told him if he sold the car, that I'd never talk to him again. Fortunately, he didn't, and he gave me the car. Yeah, it's just a part of my life, I suppose. Drove it when I took my girlfriend out, and it just so happened that I married her. So now I even take my family out in it.
Holden, you in my Holden. You were meant to be mine. We will have a wedding, no regretting. Baby, ain't that fine? Now we can't expect all sunny weather. Troubles come, my dear, but as long as we two travel together, we'll take them all in top gear. Holding you in my Holden. Life is simply sublime. I'll be holding you all life through when you're mine, oh mine.
To me, the VT Commodore is a very fashionable, smart-looking car. I really think it is, and I think it can stand among many, many overseas cars and not look like a car. Oh yes, it's a good car, but it's a bit rough and rugged and made for Australia. This suddenly has underneath the toughness, but outside that, it has a style and a classiness about it that I think allows it to mix internationally.
The current Commodores, and I think they're wonderful.
They've got a sophistication about them now in the look, both inside and outside. It's really made a statement, and to me that's a sign of Australian design coming to a peak of maturity.
I've been associated in a very small way with some of the latest activities. And it's really mind-boggling.
The greatest benefit in the end of the computer in modern car design is it's the way it's reduced the time it takes to design and build a car.
Computers hasten development of cars, potentially cut down on the sort of problems that may occur in the early days of the car, but then, of course, most importantly, too, within the car, greatly assist in both the running of the car and the diagnosis of problems within them. So they play an absolutely essential part.
I mean, at Elizabeth they're building Vectras, Commodores, Statesmen, Caprices, utilities, left and right-hand drive, all on the same line. And that's all run by computers, which has the right version arriving at the right spot to get the right bit put on it for the market to which it's intended.
Holden's computer-optimized safety feature system is designed to help protect a whole community of vehicle users. That's drivers and passengers of all sizes and all ages in the widest possible range of accident situations. The Commodore restraint system was evaluated using computer techniques that tested over 100,000 different combinations of occupant sizes, seat cushion types, seating positions, airbag performance characteristics, and crash severities.
They're also unique in that they're big, of course. We now build probably the biggest cars in the world, bigger than even some of the American cars. And they're one of the few rear-drive cars left in the world, which is why now their American parents are looking to Australia, and in fact we are exporting Holdens to the Middle East and to South America, because the world has suddenly realised that they really like big rear-drive cars, and we build the best in the world.
Of course, Holden has been exporting Australian cars since 1954, and throughout the 50s and 60s, GMH continued their overseas push.
Yes, Australia's fabulous Holden, seen here arriving in Cape Town. It's a real fair dinkum job, isn't it? The Holden, the only car in the world specially designed for the tough driving conditions of a country like ours. And that is why the Holden is perfectly at home right here. Now they're comfortable too. Oh yes, big seats for 6 people, and that big hearted 6-cylinder engine gives you 25 to 30 miles to the gallon and practically looks after itself. Here at your service is this great car for a great country. Holden, built by General Motors and backed by General Motors service throughout Southern Africa.
Holden, made for a country like ours.
I think we were constantly surprised that all of a sudden we were getting into places that some of us had to look at an atlas and find out where they were.
Holden is now a familiar sight in such places as Fiji, Hong Kong, Singapore, New Zealand, South Africa. Just 5 of the more than 50 markets to which it's exported. Australia now earns millions of pounds each year in overseas exchange from the export of more than 10,000 Holdens a year. People everywhere, like this taxi driver in Fiji, are well aware of the capability and reliability of Holden. Further north, on the teeming streets of other cities of the Orient, Holden is also well known and is most often referred to as the car from Australia. The first export Holden went to New Zealand in 1954. In 1957, it was being exported to 19 territories. The list of export territories continues to expand each year.
You could go into Athens and you'd be driving around a Holden taxi, and we had a lot of excitement. We used to have the dealers constantly coming in. We had a dealer in Colombo who was very strong, and we had a gung-ho export group that were out there.
Today, left-hand drive versions of the VT Commodore are rebadged as Chevrolets. Many of these are tackling the sands of Dubai and other Middle Eastern destinations.
I think that we've got design parameters for the vehicles here that are very well suited for a lot of countries with similar road conditions. And I think the fact now that the VT Commodore is going into Saudi Arabia, for instance, where they're running around on sand all the time, and one of the few cars around the place that are having no trouble.
Since those first FJs crossed the Tasman 45 years ago, Holden's exports have numbered 465,000 vehicles and reached 75 countries, earning the Australian economy more than $8 billion. And as Australia's largest exporter of manufactured goods, Holden has sent nearly 3 million engines around the world.
Australian cars are ahead in terms of a number of things, in the way the suspension and seats are tuned with each other for Australian roads and road conditions, in their body strengths particularly, in their ride and handling. They are as good as anything out of Europe because they have to cope with some difficult conditions.
Since that significant November day in 1948, 5.5 million Holdens have been produced to cope with those difficult conditions. And today's Holden range has changed dramatically from the early days. when there was only one model. Now, there are luxury, family, medium, small, commercial, and off-road Holdens.
For the Australian public, in a sense, I suppose it's done for Australia what Henry Ford did for world motoring with the Model T and more specifically America. It's brought the motor car in large numbers at a good price, suited to the environment, to the average person in the country, and I suppose that's what Holden's done over its 50 years.
Question. What do you think a Holden's going to look like in 50 years' time? What do you reckon?
Well, I think they're going to be faster, smoother, and they're going to be more reliable and safer.
They could invent electric cars that can go as fast as normal petrol cars. I think they'll suck in air and then push it out to move. Okay. Possibly because the ozone layer won't last with a large amount of pollution from cars. You just program something in and you can just do it. Yeah, and just go. Like in first class in a plane. Yeah. You get like wine served to you. And like really, really far in the future, they're going to be like robots that drive toys. Really big. Huge. Yep. I reckon there's like hovercrafts, and then on water they don't like hover because they might get splashed. Like there's a thing that inflates on the bottom, so they just sail across. And like there's a bag on the back of the thing where all the smoke comes out, so it doesn't pollute the person.
So it catches its own pollution?
Yeah.
And stores it or something. That's good, isn't it?
Well, it's going to go faster.
Faster, you think?
Yeah, faster.
What do you reckon?
I think it's going to be more aerodynamic. More speed, the better.
I think they'll like have more safety features, and I think they'll come in lots of different colours and things.
I think it's going to be anti-gravity.
Anti-gravity, we'll go for that one, yeah.
It'll be more spacious and it'll have more speed.
I'd expect that, just like the original car, they'll be influenced by the environment, both urban and country, as much as the old car was. Different power sources, totally different packages from what we're expecting to see today. I mean, cars won't be cars that we understand.
I think that you'll be developing modular vehicles. Matter of fact, we were playing with that back in the late 70s, where you've got a structure and then you can take modules of it and it can become a small utility, it can be a fun vehicle and so on. There's going to be a lot of interchangeability.
For Holden's 100th anniversary, cars, BT's good now. In that time frame, I guess, I'd hope we're still building cars that, well, the #1 selling car in Australia here. 4 doors, maybe, weird sort of power, I suppose. Fuel cells, hybrid mix, and hopefully reconfigurable. Cars that take you somewhere rather than you having to drive them.
They'll be running fuel cell technology, which is based on producing hydrogen from a source such as methanol, or you can even produce hydrogen from petrol. So all you get at the exhaust pipe is water vapour. That's all you get.
On the safety side, and you combine that with design going forward, I think you have a situation where you don't have to drive your car anymore. The car will take care of you, and I guess it'll be well and truly passive safety. Your car will protect you by driving you and transporting you where it wants to take you, where it knows is good. You won't be able to get yourself into trouble because the car will keep you out of it.
I think that regardless of what you do, because of the population problems, I think cars have to be a lot smaller. I don't think we'll see the big cars that you see in America today. I think they're gone.
I think because we're such an urbanised society, the demand will be that we downsize. We'll come down a lot in size. I think we'll see 2 sizes of Holden. I think we'll see a 4 to 5 seater, about the size of the current Vectra, will be the car that we'll have. And then there'll be a small urban commuter. Small urban commuter, probably for 2 people.
You'll be tending to have the exterior size of the vehicle reducing, but the interior size remaining the package that people want.
The size of people's increasing, so therefore the argument that cars going forward, the traditional green argument, they need to be small, to be fuel efficient and all the rest of it. Expecting we're going to have different fuel sources, different power systems in the car, and that people are actually getting bigger, not smaller. you'd have to say that compact cars might be all right for urban environment, which will be totally different in that time frame. But generally, if you want to fit a family in a car, it won't be any different to today. You'll need a big car.
Well, I think it's going to be a radical change. I think that if people think it's going to be an evolution, I think that that's probably missing the mark. I can see more of a revolution coming up. I think the seeds of revolution are there now. There's a lot of young people involved in the car manufacturing business who are looking at fuel cells and composite body panels and probably all sorts of things like electromagnetic distancing from other cars, and perhaps even to ride upon the road. Perhaps they don't actually touch the road anymore in 50 years' time. They're riding above the road and somehow, but I think there's going to be some radical changes.
So there are obviously many more Holden dreams yet to be fulfilled. It has really been a remarkable journey so far. The first 50 years have been made up of good old Aussie ingenuity, perseverance, style, and lots of fun. Everyone at Holden is appreciative that you've taken these cars to your hearts. And as Holden goes global, we can promise that there are many more great cars still to come. We can't tell you what the 100th anniversary model will look like. Maybe one of our young future gazers from Albert Park Primary School will be in charge of design and production. But we can guarantee you that the 50 years leading up to the 100th birthday will be just as exciting as the first 50 years. As Ben Chipley said when he launched that first 48-215, good luck to the Holden car and good luck to all that ride therein. Everyone Holden thanks you for sharing this anniversary.
We got this country moving, we helped them on their way. We built the best, they stood the test every working day. It's heart and it's commitment and standing by your mates. It's pride in our achievement and we are proud to say